Hello everyone, I'm your host Nopur and I'm back with an interesting discussion with Mr. Pramod Agrawal today, who is a CTO at IBS FinTech right now. And he has over 25 years of experience as a technology executive in building and transforming a range of enterprise software businesses, from software platforms to enterprise applications, including cloud based services. Hi Pramod, how are you?
Good morning, I'm doing well. Nupur. Thank you for inviting me to this. Happy to talk to
Thank you
you.
for Thank you for joining us, Pramod. And to begin with our discussion, since you deal a lot with technology, what are the key leadership traits supporting the digital transformation in organizations, especially when they're facing the VUCA conditions?
Uh, I have been in technology business for a long time, and in fact, I started my career doing consulting, where I implemented software at large organizations in America. And since that time, I have found that the goal of technology in businesses has not changed. It is still the same. It is to improve the business performance, improve the business competitiveness, improve customer satisfaction, get better financial metrics. So the basic goals of business has never changed, and technology happens to be a tool in accelerating some of those goals or even making it possible for some of those goals to be achieved. So digital as another technology, and there have been many technology revolutions in the world in over 100, 125 years, whether it is electricity, whether it is communication, it is transportation, logistics, and each one of these has had a role to play. For the last 25 years or so, we have been quite focused on this information technology, and we call it digital because it has revolutionized the way the information uh, communication is faster, and how the nature of communication itself is changing because of digitization itself, whether it is with respect to internal processes, whether it is with respect to communicating to the customers, and it has led to transformative ways to think about how do I manage, for example, large workforces? How do I manage multinational organizations? How do I manage complex supply chains around the world? And in that way, the digitization or binary representation of information, which shows, uh, forget the name of the founder of the information theory, um, but it was sort of postulated in 1940s and 1950s. And since then, we have been on this journey as to when you digitize information, what can it do for you? Right? And what we understand today is that when you digitize information, you're breaking down the silos of information. You are removing the asymmetry of information in the organization. You're making it possible to understand the behaviors of systems, processes, people uh, in large, massive numbers, which was not possible before. Now, what do you need from a leadership point of view, which was your original question, that when you look at it from a leadership point of view, it has therefore become very important that as the scale of understanding that is possible due to the nature of information today versus an intuitive understanding of a business or a process or a system, a leader has to now have skills um, where he has to be relevant and effective in this new world. And how do you do that, right? So some of the things that for great leaders have not changed are, for example, things like communication, things like empathy. Uh, but in this, especially in this VUCA world, the ability to have systemic thinking, which is possible through a understanding of information, I think that's a skill that the leaders have to certainly develop to be successful, because Now, leaders at all levels can cannot hide behind the fact that it's only about an intuitive understanding of something, because a data-driven understanding is now possible. So systems thinking, I think, is a very important feature of today's successful leaders. And today's successful leaders do that with a lot of dependence on this data-driven thinking. So I think that has come to the fore as to assist a successful leader today who's able to lead digital transformation will be a systems thinker. He'll be able to analyze, he'll be able to interpret information, and not be limited, because today the information revolution has removed a lot of those barriers. So you have to be able to think at the systems level to drive those changes. And because the people that you're leading, or the systems or the groups that you're leading, are also now getting increasingly trained in these ideas, for you to be convincing, you have to really lead with that kind of thing. So I think that's become very important attribute of a leader. And when you're looking at things as systems, then from the basic definition of VUCA, you're also starting to think a lot more about the challenges of today's and tomorrow's, and that can certainly then help to get you a better understanding of those uncertainties and challenges, to drive that into your decisions, even though a lot of those decisions in this world today will remain, shall we say, due to lack of complete information, have to be based somewhat on your judgment, but your judgment will be better founded if it is based on systems thinking. So I found that that's very important, and clearly people leadership is even more important than before, because if things outside are uncertain or going in future are uncertain, then taking people along is ever more important, because they need to be able to trust you and your decisions and your judgments over a longer period of time, and be with you in that. And some of the things that my children are now fairly grown up, they're 17 and 12. But I can say that in old age, when I was grown up, parents never had to answer why should the child do something or should not. But today, the style of parenting has changed, right? Even the kids want answers as to why you're telling them something. And that similarly applies to how you lead people at workplace, how you lead your customers, your stakeholders. So I think it's very similar.
Absolutely. So if I have to um, take a couple of things from what you have said, is some key traits for leadership is not just intuitive decision making, but data driven decision making, system thinking, and people leadership. These are a couple of things that has to be taken care of as a leader.
Absolutely, I think that's key.
Yeah. Now we're moving forward to another aspect of implementing change in an organization, Pramod. How important it is to understand the behaviors of your company's staff, leaders, and customers, and facilitating the adoption of a new vision.
So I think that sort of ties back into your previous question nicely. The people leadership, the importance of this has never changed. I think it is critical that people understand people, because humanity is about business of people only, right? Um, and there is this theories that came around, I think, in early 1900s, Maslow. And if you look at Maslow's theory and how people need to have a certain uh, safety in their physical environment, social environment, and then get on to more higher aspects of what drives them as an individual. Uh, I think understanding people's behavior, especially in today's uncertain world, world is going through a lot of changes, whether it's globalization, deglobalization, uh, how we are learning from the Western world, especially in India, how our aspirations are changing, how we are sort of restless about the world. If you think about social media, then it's a technology, it's a societal change brought on by technology, never understood by technologists. Uh, and therefore, if you think of your staff, especially in India, I think average age may not be more than 35, which means that more than 50% of the people are sort of born native digital, and understanding how that is impacting their lives, what is driving them, and tie that back into sort of that Maslow's theory. I think it is important because unless you give these guys, give your workforce a sense of fulfillment in their physical surroundings, social surroundings. I think Maslow has a very different terms for this. And then what really aspires them. I think without understanding that aspiration, you will not be able to create a work environment in which your work will be fulfilling, right? And notions of, for example, the notions of employees loyalty or customers loyalty, I think those don't exist anymore, right? And the best you can hope for is that it's a mutually beneficial relationship for both. I think if you are a leader in this environment, then one way to think about it is anyway they are a replaceable commodity, but that is not going to take your organization forward. So I think you have to really continue to invest in people. So this relationship in which you are in with your employee and with your customers is one that can drive the organization's mission forward, and as much as it is able to take those employees and customers along. So I think without understanding this behavioral aspect in today's circumstances, you will not be able to effectively lead, whether it's about your customers or partners or from investors, what their expectations are towards your financial performance. So yeah, I think that makes the job a bit harder, but I think it's very exciting as well.
Certainly. I mean, let's talk about how the world changed after coronavirus outbreak. What are the impact of changes you have implemented then to what you're doing right now in your organization, Pramod?
I think I can speak a lot from this. I used to work with the Automation Anywhere, where we had a very large global team, and now I'm with this India-focused team here. I think one of the things that this imposition of the remote work environment did to workforces, it brought about a necessary mindset shift in the way we thought about defining work itself, right? And Peter Drucker happens to be my favorite management author, and he talks about how you define the work is very important. And one example in one of his early books that he used to give is, if you're a simple pole worker on a telephone pole or an electricity pole, if you tell the electricity pole worker that your only job is to maintain this pole, versus you tell them to make sure that the electrical supply for this regional geographical area which this electrical pole or transformer is controlling, then the worker's way of thinking about what he or she is performing changes significantly. One is task, the other is objective, right? And I think what happened during, of course, I think a lot of it came from the way we started thinking about the assembly line work, where work was very well defined, and because you had supervisor layer up the chain, there was very constant real-time feedback into what was happening and not. When the corona came, I think that broke, and I think it broke, and I think it broke for a good reason. I feel that now we were more as a managerial staff, the managers got persuaded to define not just tasks but objectives, because they knew they could not have that day-to-day feedback from the shop floor or the office, but they had to monitor it based on objectives. Right? And I think besides some of the digital tools that came around like Zoom, Teams, and other collaboration tools, which are important. I think they became, they removed this barrier between, I think they really brought on this revolution in video communication, that people became comfortable talking to each other on a video phone, right? And technology improvement helped that. But I think the biggest change to me didn't happen due to technology. I think the biggest change that I think organizations are carrying forward, and certainly more my organization is how do you define an employee's work and define it in a way where it's related to objectives that inherently then also shows the employee what he or she is contributing to the organization. She's not merely performing a task, right? She's going after a larger goal and objective. And I think that style of change of management is also very empowering for the younger generation, right? Because as I look at younger generation, they're less likely to be motivated by a list of tasks without understanding the larger goals. And I think sort of it also goes back to the parenting comment I made earlier, that you explain to children why they should or should not do something, right? And I think that behavioral shift that happened during Corona, and my hope is that we carry that forward, not just as a managerial trait, but also as the way we define performance criteria for employees, the way we define the compensation metrics. And I think when that starts to change, I think we would have, in my mind, fully utilized the tragedy that Corona brought and imbibed a work culture that is inherently very empowering and motivating for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely, Pramod. Now coming back to the challenges tech teams face. So, what are the greatest difficulties for them, the tech teams, to adapt to how customers are changing? Please share if you have any experiences to address those sort of challenges.
I think if you look at the technology vendors, and I can speak for the technology vendors, like because that's been where my experience has been. I think the tech teams today are challenged due to the uh, pace of change brought on by digital, where customer expectations in what digital can and should be doing, and at the end of the day, the responsibility of fulfilling that is on the tech team, right? Now, as the digital is evolving, and for any technology, if you look at electricity over 100 years or more, now we are beginning to understand, for example, utility nature of electricity came about 78 years ago, and that led to massive build outs in power plants and massive infrastructure and distribution of electricity. In the same way, we are now understanding the digital, right? And we are understanding the digital, but our aspirations as customers from digital are very high, right? And tech teams are just keeping up with it, right? They're constantly only keeping up with it. They're not able to move ahead of it, right? Which is a good thing for any new technology. And digital certainly is not an old technology, though it has been around for 60 odd years, but in use for 30 odd years and in massive use for last 10 to 15 years, right? So I think tech teams' biggest challenge is how do they keep pace with the customer expectations, and how they are integrating themselves into that cycle of expectations and aspirations, right? And I think both sides, whether it's customers and the tech teams that are delivering this, they have to be really joined at the hip in that journey, where they are able to communicate with each other with a level of openness, transparency, including what limits of digital technology today are, right? For example, it's very easy to get excited about AI, but we know where AI is today from a real world use point, right? And customer expectation from AI, from what they hear from the marketing promotions and advertisements and articles in big magazines, is it's magic. But AI is not at a point of magic today. But that truth, when they experience in talking to the technical teams and talking to actual people who are working on those projects anywhere, is that it is not magic yet. And certainly the basis of doing that technology change, where you had laid out certain business goals to be achieved with AI, are not meeting, or if they're meeting at a very high cost, those become a source of challenge and friction for the teams that are working together. So I think, to me, the space of change, the expectations of technology, uh, this idea that you're trying to get ahead of yourself, where something can only do X, but you're promising 10X. I think those have to be understood really well, and a path has to be laid out jointly between the teams that are working on these problems and the customers or the beneficiary of this outcome. And then I think that'll help build a better relationship between the two teams.
All right, and uh, I'm sure there are some routine tasks in an organization, and there are some long-term strategic initiatives the organization set for itself. According to your experiences, how do you achieve a balance between the both the routine task and the long-term strategic initiatives?
Yeah, I think this is where a leader's role, leaders has to have a bipolar vision, where there's a focus on short-term execution. The execution excellence is what gives you the width to invest in the long term, right? So a very sharp focus on execution excellence is super important. Uh, but you cannot lose sight of this future, right? So let's take some small example of AI, right? Today, if you're an organization that does not want to understand AI as a technology and what it can do for you, if you're not investing in it today, then it is unlikely that you will understand it 5 years later. And I think you will decidedly be behind the curve to a point where you will not be able to provide those delightful experiences to customer that AI could possibly bring. Right? Let's say if you're leading if you're a head of engineering, if you're leading developers, it'll be a mistake if the developers are not experimenting with technologies like GitHub's Copilot, because it's fundamentally assisting in you writing better code. And as developers are writing better code, not only they're going to be able to save some time, but the way they code and the way they think about coding will change. And this behavioral change in the way they think about how to code, how to plan for coding, will take months and years to settle into the organization. And based on that, your tooling for development, engineering tasks will change. And therefore, it is important to invest today in these technologies. If you're, for example, 3 years ago, the organization that settled very quickly into the COVID world were the ones where a lot of the digital tools like Teams and Zoom were already in place. And there was at that time, there was no luxury of time, and therefore people adapted quickly. But that is only a once in a while thing, right? So I think a technological change or a long-term change in the society has to be anticipated well, so your organization is well prepared for it to take maximum advantage of it, right? And I think that leverage only comes if you invest early and be prepared for some of those early failures. And that's another piece of this VUCA world that's very important, that failures are going to be part of that larger success. You can't always expect to invest in the right technology or the right tool set. You may have a few failures along the way, and you would have spent your time, resource, and money on that. But that will be part of building that resilient organization in the long term.
Thank you, Pramod, for sharing some wonderful insights with us on these questions. And now we are moving on to the next section of this interview to know you a little better. It is going to be a rapid fire question and answer. So, are you ready for that?
Sure, yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. So I know just before we started this discussion, I know you're from Delhi and I can understand your love for food. What's your favorite dish?
I think it has to be chole kulche.
I
This
somehow assumed that. I was going to say chole bhature, but yeah, Delhi is known
the
for some
chole
amazing
kulche
food.
beats that. It has that
Yeah,
very eclectic mix of northwestern frontier food in it. It's just lovely.
that's amazing. And which is your favorite book, Pramod?
I have to say I don't have a particular favorite book, but off late for the last couple of years, I've been in this group where we study Gita together, and we have done it now twice, same book twice over. And every time I go to this Gita learning session, I find that some verse of Gita will hit you in a way that you never expected, and the insights that it can give you. So I think it is possible that Gita will become my favorite book. But uh, and there are of course a lot of management books and other things that I read. Gandhi was my another favorite quote unquote author, if you will, uh, but not a particular book that way.
All right. And in case you have to gift a book to somebody, which book would it be? Would it be Gita again?
I think there's a book that I read many years ago, and it came back again as a gift to me. There's a book by Atul Gawande called The Checklist Manifesto. I
Mm-hmm.
really find that it's a wonderful short book, written really beautifully, and it talks about how should you think about the world in a very simple way, and that creating a list of things will help clarify complexity, drive simplicity into it. So, yeah, I routinely give this checklist manifesto to people.
That's amazing. And do you have any favorite quote or something that you tell people to motivate?
This is a quote from I think Second World War by Mr. Churchill, and it goes something like this: failure is not fatal, and success is not final. It's the will to continue that counts. And I think that is personally very motivating for me, and as well as I tell that to the teams a lot, because I think if you're leading a innovation team, a technology team, or an organization into the future, this has to be uh, this has to be known that um, nothing is permanent in this world.
All right. And what is a bigger challenge for you to teach your kids for their exam or to train your employees at the organization? What is more difficult for you?
Actually, I've never taught my kids, so very rarely do they come to me for help. But I have to say that to me, both are very, very joyful, and I take them fairly similarly because I sort of like to get into their frame of mind as to how they see things, and then try to help them see the way where I can possibly see it a little further because of my gray hair. And I don't see that as particularly challenging.
All right, that's great to know. And now moving on to the last section of the discussion, Pramod. We would like to have your expert tips. So please share one message for the budding technology leaders. What is your advice to
I think for the budding technology leaders, I think you're entering the workforce or you've entered the workforce recently if you have, at a time where I think a lot of hard work of information technology that has happened in the last 30 to 40 years, and the understanding of to business and society, I should say, business and society, use these tools. The two things are converging, where I think this next 10 years will be the foundation of something completely new. I think you will see millions of small and large experiments as a result of this convergence. Whether you look at AI, whether you look at a much better understanding of what blockchain can be and should be, what social media should be, what trust should be, how technology should intermediate trust. I think we are at this very beautiful juncture where you guys really will have a tremendous life and tremendous career, and it'll be very exciting for you guys. But what will be most important to participate in this is being very curious. I think you have to be very curious. You have to be very humble to explore that curiosity. Right? You cannot explore curiosity without being very humble. So if you adopt this trait of humility and curiosity, I think, like they say, the world will be your oyster. So I wish you all the best. I think you're here at the right time. And I hope you can stand on the shoulders of your prior generations and build a world which is much more sustainable, much more equitable. I think that's my wish and hope for the world and for you specifically.
Thank you very much, Pramod. I thoroughly enjoyed this whole discussion. Some great
Thank you, Nupur.
insights shared.
Some really good questions, and that got me thinking as our discussion progressed. So great interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.